some? Oh yeah, you got it. She's good. Pretty light. So what we'll do is wait off and hands on and just walk us around the trailer and we'll gradually drift that way. Yeah. We'll see you guys. Thanks. Like to actually stay low, okay? With what you're doing now is fine, and but what I'm thinking is, since we do have a little bit of strainage, let's take a little bit of advantage of it before we jump up and go to the north.
Okay, just try to get as much south as we can out of it.
Yeah, I think so, and we'll, maybe we'll get to the power lines, and when we have to climb up over the power lines, then we'll just keep climbing on out. Thing that does is, if they care, that allows Dave and Chris, if they want to match us, because they could just jump straight up and then we'd be right there, you know. How you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. Good.
Yeah, that was a real nice inflation. Stayed calm, but I'm surprised at how much drainage we do have, actually. Tell me a little bit about your fuel strategy. What's your plan here?
Well, right now I'm using this one and that one.
Okay.
And I'll use this one till it's gone and go to that one.
Okay.
And then I'll switch to that, and I'm going to save this one for last since it's my pilot.
Sounds good.
Although I don't really need to. Even if I run this down, I still have plenty for a pilot, don't I?
Yeah, there's enough vapor in there to run a pilot for a long time. Okay, so we're just now high enough I can see the tower, so why don't you plan to sort of keep an eye on the power lines, and then feel comfortable, go ahead and call the tower.
Colorado Springs Towers, hot air balloon, November 74008.
Are you set to the right frequency? Nope. I remember I took it on the flight and I messed with it.
I guess I need to check that. Make that part of the checklist.
Can't quite see it as I'm looking in the sun. I'll deal with this if we can. Okay, that should work better for you. Sorry about that.
Colorado Springs Towers, hot air balloon, November 74008.
They're not in the mood to talk to us today.
I have to keep trying until I get acknowledged.
Ideally, yeah, but 119.9, yeah, that's right. Springs Tower, hot air 74008. almost sounded like a response. What a gorgeous day.
It is. I don't think I've been up with snow on the ground.
It's nice, isn't it?
It actually kind of, you can see the terrain a little bit better.
Yeah, you really see all the little valleys, and it's easy to pick out a fence line and all that. Interesting. Look at the roads that they've cut in over here.
Oh yeah.
Huh, that's new. I read a Gazette article that they're planning to fill in the space. You know that little rectangle field between 94 and Space Village?
Yeah.
They were going to fill that in and then come south with the neighborhoods on the other side of Mark Scheffel.
Growing like crazy.
I know.
Turning one right?
Yep.
Should make for a pretty efficient day too.
Oh yeah, with these temperatures. And I don't know about you, but I don't feel very cold.
No, I feel better now than I did before we started.
My fingers were a little cold then, but I'm pretty good now.
There wasn't any of this on the ruck.
No, it was all going almost due west, so yeah.
So this is drainage probably?
I think so, yeah. I'm a little bit surprised actually with how calm it is.
See, about 6,900 was supposed to be that 210,
Okay.
which is the direction we're ultimately going to be after, right? One thing I am learning is don't get your mind set on what the ruck says.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd like the ruck to be just a perfect picture of the wind, and it's, in fairness, it's pretty good, but you know, I certainly don't trust the first few hundred feet of it. You can't trust any forecast for that. Normally I have found it's pretty reliable, sort of 500 feet and above though.
So we're slowing down pretty good, so we're probably hitting something with a different direction.
I think you're right. I think we're probably right at that boundary layer. We were going, what, 190, and so now we've slowed down and gotten a right turn, so we'll see. I do think we want to be cautious about not letting ourselves get too far to the west.
Okay. So jump up and start going back.
Just because the ruck suggested that we would have a strong right turn as we go north, but the pieballs didn't really show that.
No, they just went pretty north. I don't think I burned that much.
Yeah, I think that was one of those right at the boundary layer, because you were almost level, and then a small burn, and now we're, you know, shooting up at 150 feet a minute. That's not dramatic, but notice how we're now getting that west real slow. But I'm thinking it was probably like a temperature inversion or something like that. Because now look how warm it is. At least the instruments say it's 45.
Right.
I don't really buy that because it's in the sun and all that kind of a thing, but at least it gives you an idea of what's going on. So at this stage, I would continue to climb until we see that north. And in an ideal world, we would actually get due north or even a little bit of a right of north, just to make sure we're staying clear of the airport.
Okay. Go up to about 69 and see what's there.
Mm-hmm. Lake looks pretty frozen, doesn't it? I wonder how the lake gets its water. Like, are there pipes coming in that fill it, or is it just runoff? I don't know. Those tractors are heated. I find it interesting how some of these fields are sort of mostly grass with a little bit of snow, and then you get into this cattle field, and I mean, it's almost like the fences have made it just snowy there. I don't know why one field is perfectly blanketed and the next one right next to it is empty. On both sides.
The sun's hitting it, how the
Maybe.
wind's blowing it.
Picking up some speed, huh? 11 knots, nice. Still got that 340, so it'll be nice if we can pick up some right turn. Keep climbing, see if we can get a little bit more. Take a look at the ruck just to see whether it's changed since I looked at it last.
So when you want to look at like current on the ruck, you just put in like 3 hours or something.
Yeah, and it will show up at least the most. There is no sort of what I would call actual winds. It's only a forecast, but you can get the most recent forecast for right now, you know. Zulu, that's about where we are. Okay. So this is saying that we should see at 7,500, we should be, well, a little over 7,000. It says we should turn to the right of north. And it's saying it's 7,000, it should be 200 at 15. And then at 75, it's 220 at 60. So you can see we've now gotten 72 and we're doing due north, which is beautiful. And so visualize your roads here. This is Mark Scheffel and Mark Scheffel straight up. Right. Okay. So if we just walk straight up Mark Scheffel, there's a ton of opportunities.
Okay.
And we're off the runway, so we're not interrupting landings and that kind of thing. Okay, Dave's off the ground.
This is kind of an ideal direction.
I love it. I think this is one of my most favorite areas. So one of the things that we'll have to watch out for, though...
Tequila Sunrise, radio check.
Go ahead.
Tequila Sunrise, Tequila Chaser, read you loud and clear.
Is when we decide that it's time to come down for landing, I'm not sure that we can trust that that same ground wind will still be there.
Right.
It did look to me in the forecast that the ground wind was going to continue from the east to the west. And so in that sense, if we run up here and say get to Constitution or something, then we might expect a left turn on landing. But I think with it relatively calm like that, I'm not sure what we can predict. I'm assuming Dave and Chris are going to do sort of the same thing we did. Okay, something that I wanted to talk through while we're sort of up here with no hazards is sort of how to handle or how to navigate an impending collision with a ground obstacle.
Okay.
Something like a house, building, fence, power lines, that kind of thing. Typically, the most likely scenario where you're going to come in contact with something like that is either you're in a landing approach and you get a hard wind shift where, let's say there's an obstacle over here, you're going this way, and then you get down into that last layer and you get a hard turn you weren't anticipating. That's the primary reason why we spit overboard as we're coming down, to get a sense as, are we going to get a shift, be conservative, but it still happens. Especially in the summer, a little bit later in the mornings, you'll start to get thermal activities, that kind of a thing. So that's one scenario that you have to watch out for. The other one is sort of a result of target fixation, where you're going in for a landing and you're so focused on the landing that there might be something ahead of you that you're not aware of. And then sometimes what will happen is you'll miss a landing, or you'll decide to abort a landing, and then, oh shit, there's an obstacle in front of you. So it does happen. Obviously, that's the idea of paying a lot of attention. The temptation in that moment is frequently sort of burn like hell because I can get over this. Sometimes that's true. However, a lot of times when you're in landing mode, the balloon's cold already, you don't have a lot of performance, you may be light on fuel. And so that you've got to really guard against that gut reaction of burning is always the answer. You know, it's like if you're at 75 feet and then you see a power line downwind and, all right, I'm going to abort the landing, then you burn and you're well clear of it. But if you're at 5 feet, it's a different story. And the rule of thumb in that situation, take a power line for instance, is if you're in that landing, let's say you're 5, 10, 15 feet above the ground, and then you sort of have that, oh shit, there's a power line in front of us moment. Then the right response is to vent as aggressively as you can.
Just get on the ground.
Get on the ground. And the idea there is twofold. This is a beautiful track here, Travis. This is great. I feel like we're picking up speed. What do we got? 15? Nice. Right out due north. The idea there is, first of all, you might be able to actually get the balloon on the ground and stopped before you get to the obstacle altogether. And you thunk it in the ground and shake off the dust, and the power line's still 50 feet in front of you. That's ideal. The other thing that you're doing is, if you are actually going to hit a power line, you want to hit it with the fabric as high up as you can.
Not cabling. And
not cables, not baskets. And so that you don't have all of the sort of the electrical and fire and sparking right in your face, right? Because then you could sever a fuel hose. You know, things get steadily worse. The other thing, the other advantage you have of landing quickly and getting the basket on or near the ground when you hit the power lines is, if the basket is on the ground, then you've actually completed the circuit to the ground, and you as a human are then safe to climb out.
Okay.
Rather than if you're hanging there, then you run a risk of jumping and hurting. You know, that's just, jumping is always dangerous.
Right.
But also, even when the basket is hanging low, there have been, at least that, you know, think about it. What you do is you climb out of the basket really carefully, then you're hanging onto the basket and you touch the ground, then you're the one. Not ideal. So the idea is, if you have that oh shit moment, you want to get the balloon landed, stopped, deflated as quickly as you can. And for the vast majority of the times, first of all, the oh shit moment won't happen very often. But if it does, the vast majority of the times, you'll get the balloon stopped before you ever get to the obstacle. If you respond quickly. And if you'll notice that that's one of the reasons why I sort of keep harping on the idea of getting your landing mode, so that, well, yeah, I'm not landing for another 30 seconds. I get 500 yards. You don't know that. You know, we talk about power line avoidance, and we obviously want to avoid them, but there is a correct way to hit them.
Right. You're gonna have to do it.
Depending on how much time you have, the ideal scenario is your fuel is off and the vent's open and you're tucked in, and even if you had to open that vent at 15 feet, it's still not the end of the world.
Right.
It's a hell of a lot more pleasant than hitting a power line. I actually saw, and I wish I had a camera, it's stuck in my head. I saw a power line strike at Fiesta one year that was executed just absolutely perfect. I was flying maybe this high, and there was another guy right down here shooting a landing coming towards a road, and that road had power lines on it. And I was like, what is going on? And so I shout down at him, power lines, and I could actually see, you know, sort of right, I'm looking right at the top of the balloons, and I could see a little sort of a flinch, and I could see a ripple in the balloon, like he sort of freaked out and looked up and all that kind of stuff. And I saw that vent open, and I could actually look down the parachute, and I saw him venting and getting down in the basket and reach over and shut the tanks off, and then he's tucked in. And then the balloon went into the power line, blew the transformer, balloon draped over, the basket was on the ground, he got out, sat down quickly, and I mean, it was just perfectly executed.
Stream for information matrix, stream altimeter, 2994.
What's that? North.
What do we have now? 350?
Where was I at? About 74 when I was...
Yeah, it feels like it's we've stayed at the same level, but we're getting gradual turn. That's surprising.
Temperature's fluctuating real, like, abnormally, like...
The envelope temperature is?
So no, my ascent and
Oh,
descent.
okay.
I thought I was doing pretty level, and
So I think it's because we're hovering right around a boundary layer. And I think that where it's at 75, I think if you went up another, say, 200 feet, I think you would get a little bit of a right turn, and I think you'd feel it stabilize. Because I keep feeling that little breeze in my face.
I'm up to about 76 or so.
Okay. I've landed in this little patch here a couple of times. As I drove by this morning, I noticed that they've sort of more convincingly closed the road. That's not as helpful. that was Meadow Lake. Sounded like it was a little out of date, but they're saying 120. Do you know where Meadow Lake is?
I don't.
If you take this Highway 24 out,
Oh, is it Falcon? The Falcon
Uh-huh.
Airport?
Yep.
Okay, I know exactly where that's at.
sort of just up there next to the Big R.
Okay.
And the reason I like calling them is because they're up on the hill, whereas down here we get a little bit of a different deal, you know. Okay, so you got your almost north. Interesting that we're not getting a strong right turn. But that's what the piebald did too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of doing exactly what the piebald was doing.
That water is remarkably refreshing. Okay, so tell me a little bit. We've been hot for 30 minutes. And so tell me a little bit about sort of your flight strategy, your landing plan. What are you thinking as a good spot? What are your thoughts?
Oh, geez. I mean, well, if I had to go down now, I mean, I'm kind of going in towards all these neighborhoods.
Uh-huh.
I mean, so if I could get down, I mean, could I get down fast enough to land in this field?
You could. It would be pretty aggressive, but... And this is still Peterson,
Oh, yeah.
so it's unattractive, but from a safety standpoint, like let's say you have an emergency of some sort, yeah, I would say if you wanted to get into this field, we would anticipate as you drop down, you'll get a left, right? So then I would sort of clear the building, and I would vent pretty aggressively, and then sort of right at the last minute, you burn and you flare it out and you dump it in the middle of the field. It's a perfectly, you could get here as an emergency. What you'll find though is that descent, you've still got all your momentum, so it's likely to eat up quite a bit of distance.
And I mean, other than that, I mean, I just don't see a whole lot of landing here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure for someone who's really good at landing, you can pick some of these open spots.
Yeah, and I would anticipate, see, even right now, notice that we dropped down a little bit. Oh, well, not much, but it does feel like it's continuing to turn more left, even at the same altitude. And I would anticipate more and more left as you went down. So something like this, we probably can't get to.
Right.
But something like this little triangle field, you could potentially get to. Even the park behind the gas station there, that would be okay. Or if you get a real hard left, you got that grassy spot over there.
That's Powers.
Uh-huh. And you've got the golf course up here. You can see just the fresh snow.
And so to just get into a little spot like that, you're just going to track low enough that you can really kind of see, but high enough you're out of everything's way, and then so you can vent when you clear your obstacle.
That's right. That's exactly right. Let's go ahead and let it, let's climb a little bit. I'm thinking something like 8,500 maybe, but I'm thinking enough that if we can get that turn, if you can visualize, that's the hospital up there. That's Powers and Woodman.
Okay.
And so here's Mark Scheffel. It goes all the way up to Woodman. And notice if you're right of Mark Scheffel, there's a lot of open space from a safety standpoint. A lot of that is not very accessible though, but very, very safe and good landings. That little neighborhood is accessible all the way around it, but you've got some power lines to contend with. Then you see the little neighborhood that's kind of sticking out. That is on Dublin, and that is still under construction. There's still quite a bit of open space, and then there's some space between it and Woodman, and then you see all that open space north of Woodman, which if going due north, it feels crowded, but if you get a little bit of a right turn, that opens up a lot. The direction we have going past Woodman, there's that big open area up there. And I landed up there once, and remember you were chasing for me.
Is it when you get on the fence?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of open space up there. Especially at these speeds.
What'd you say get to? About 80?
I'm guessing 85, and I feel like...
Feeling something.
Yeah, like we might be able to get that turn here pretty soon. One of the challenges in planning a flight is anticipating all the layers and all the speeds. So for example, we're moving pretty quickly, right? We're now going 20 knots. We're getting that right turn and just clearing 8,000 feet. And so the temptation is we train early and on really slow, calm days. And you go, oh, that's a good landing. That's a good... No, you can't get into that one anymore. Because at 20 knots, you can't get it down fast. Right. But you could get into some of this stuff. And so you start planning further ahead.
Towers, Skyspit 325. We'll be ready at 10.
Okay, so that we have now turned.
Skyspit 325.
Going 5 degrees.
Runway 1 to the left, wind 0308. Clear for takeoff. Traffic, Skyhawk, left base, runway 17. 17 left, clear for takeoff.
Okay, and something just significant happened at the airport. This plane is being routed to 17 left.
Okay.
Which means he's going to take off to the south. Okay. Which means the winds are now blowing north on the ground.
Okay.
They're either so calm and they're anticipating a change, or they are actually going north. So that tells me that the drainage that we anticipated going away is gone. Okay, so we got just a little bit of right and north. That's nice.
Still want me to get up to 85 or?
Yeah, let's keep climbing and see how much.
Even though this is a single burner, if I pull both of them, does it make it hotter?
It does. You get about 130% of your fire out of that. Because right now, your bottleneck is actually the blast valve itself. If you open the both up, then the bottleneck becomes the coils.
Okay.
But it's about 130% or so. Well, that feels like a right turn. A little bit. Yeah, this is great. This is beautiful. Okay, so we're going to continue to survey the landscape here. This is Highway 24.
Okay.
Mark Shuffle. We're basically tracking right up Mark Shuffle. I've landed at this little island of a neighborhood several times.
Okay.
Especially the little square field between the neighborhood and Mark Shuffle's very attractive, wide open, just as an illustration. If you look up at the snowy corner, those white, that's all propane tanks.
Okay.
And then there's this thin white fields covered in snow that looks wide open. All of that is enclosed in a very serious fence, so it's unattractive to us.
95 contact departure.
I was really hoping Dave was going to come follow us. Well. And then from a hazards perspective, we've got this sort of major power line that goes up and then kind of zigzags a little bit and keeps going. And then there's this horizontal power line east-west here. It dead ends into that power line. So in that sense, it's wide open out here, but there's the two power lines to contend with here. And then you get into that neighborhood there, you can see big fields, big sort of 5-acre estates, if you will. Then the neighborhood with construction going on. Then even on the right-hand side of the neighborhood, there's snow cover. There's access in all of that area as well. And even notice now that we're getting a little closer, even the strip just this side of Woodman, that has actually quite a bit of openness to it, right?
That's right on the other side of those big power lines, huh?
Well, the power lines go right along Woodman. And so there's open space on this side and on the other side of Woodman. But yes, there's big power lines right along Woodman. Yeah, and you've got a nice 15-degree turn. So now we're sort of tracking this way. I anticipate that the ground wind will probably continue to the west. I don't know whether it will be what sort of north-south component, but I would anticipate that we'll land sort of going northwest. Does that make sense? And so I'm always thinking about, okay, if I've got think it's sort of like playing pool, right? If I'm going to shoot the cue ball this way and then it's going to hit the rail, what's my next turn? And so then, if I visualize we're going this way, but I think the ground wind is going this way, I'm sort of visualizing that dog leg pattern and where could I land? And I just sort of, in my mind, I draw that long leg, short leg, and I'm thinking, okay.
Maybe like that. If we had to come down, we maybe hit that spot.
That little spot with the orange sign, that wouldn't be too bad. Or even sort of track right along these power lines, clear the east-west power line, drop down and be in the estates somewhere. You know, the gap between the neighborhoods and Woodman, there is a power line we would have to pay attention to, obviously. So that's sort of my thought process. And that's one of the reasons why I like to plan that out so early is we've now made the climb and we know we've got a little bit of north. But if we had sort of stayed due north, we'd be in a lot
over a more congested area, tougher landings.
Exactly. So the earlier you plan ahead, you can drive into easier landing areas. Usually, you know, not always. You don't always have that, but that's the idea of looking at the forecast, picking the launch site, planning your flight early in the flight, so that you've got more and more options. And like if you're feeling like you don't have enough right, we think we go higher and we get more right.
Okay, I mean it wouldn't hurt to have some more right.
Okay, no, it wouldn't hurt at all. Sometimes this gravel plant here below us does us a favor and they pump out some steam.
Oh yeah.
You can see it just a little bit there, and it's going to the southwest. So in that sense, you know, you'd go down, we'd swirl around, and we'd end up turning that direction on the ground. So then there's this temptation, oh, I'll look over there then. Yeah, but you've got to visualize how much momentum you have in turning that arc. You know, and you could still potentially look at that little square, but that's the sense where it's going to be going definitely west. Which adds a bit of challenge because if we land out here, we're good. But if we don't land before Mark Scheffel, we get into a little bit higher congestion then. But just to get your bearings, you can see Sky Sox Field there.
Yeah. Doesn't feel like we're going 23.
I know. That's one thing about these speeds is that you got to be a little bit more aggressive in your ups and downs because you're covering a lot of ground. Dave and Chris, I think they're just right next to the steam, which is an optical illusion. I think they're actually right above the lake, and if they come up, they should be up to us. And at 21 knots, they should be able to get to us fairly quickly. Okay, so we got a lot of fuel.
Okay.
We got some hazards. We got this power line that's now blending into the ground earth. So I take a drink of water. Sort of foam up some spit. And anticipate it's got momentum. And you see how it's turning.
West a little bit.
That's right. And then I lost it. So as we we'll keep getting that turn. So then sort of if you draw that arc at these speeds, if you were to act aggressively, you would clear those power lines and you'd be in sort of the water tank area at the best case. We're super aggressive. On the other hand, if we hang up here a little while, then we could get the arc, even go over Woodman and into some of that sort of open space, big estate. And we anticipate that the ground wind will be pretty calm for the next couple of hours, right?
Right.
And so in that sense, it's going to feel, I'll anticipate, it's going to feel a little bit dramatic and scary as you're going down, changing directions. Man, where am I going to land? What am I doing? Holy shit, we're moving fast. And the key is, without getting below the line of the obstacles, get down as low as you can and get into that ground wind, let it bleed off all the speed, and then figure out what you need. So, given all of these variables, probably what I would plan on doing, and again, we can be flexible, but probably what I would be thinking at least is the idea of getting somewhere in sort of the base of the neighborhood, starting to ease down and get that left hook. And if you can visualize where Mark Scheffel comes up and attaches to Woodman, there's a big power line, of course,
right.
But then you see how much open space there is on the other side?
To the west of the soccer field?
Yes. And so then we this side of Woodman, the other side of Woodman, and if we're tracking that way, great. If we're tracking back, it's kind of no big deal. Then we put ourselves in the center that virtually any direction we could go and have a pretty nice open landing. We just got to be really cautious of the power.
Keep going. Fuel.
Does it sound? Yeah.
So I'm good to just go ahead and switch, huh?
Yep. Yep. And I like to close it and then burn it out. And then open that one.
To start descending anyway, huh?
You can, yeah. And what I would recommend is that we don't go too aggressive. We really need to, right?
Right.
But if we kind of think about this 200, maybe 250 feet a minute, easing down, we're already feeling that wind in our face. We'll get a little bit of that curl. If you can visualize the power lines, right now, I would be of the mind we should plan to go past the power lines. But let's get a feel for what the ground wind's doing.
Definitely feel that wind now.
Yep, and the power lines are right here below us, which of course is a caution, potentially horses, but lots of wide open space. And, if it matters to you, this neighborhood is one of our sponsors at Labor Day.
Okay.
So
balloon friendly.
Yep, we did a glow right in that sort of crescent-shaped field right there. So notice how you're easing down, but you're attempting to catch it so fast. It's because of the speed, 26 knots. You get this sense of, oh man, I'm going down super fast. And the key, it's a little bit counterintuitive, because the more you let it come down, then the slower we're going to go.
So stop burning so much.
But as you mentioned earlier, don't let it get ahead of you, so that you can avoid these hazards without having to do something crazy.
Keeping the balloon warm with controls like that.
Exactly. So just for reference, at these speeds, it would be very difficult to land in here just south of Dublin. It would be possible to land between power lines and Woodman. But of course, coming over the power lines at these speeds, you'd still need quite a bit of running around. But we're dropping, which is good. We're starting to see a little bit of our left turn, but we've still got a lot of speed. And we think that starts to slow down around 7,000, right? So, we got a lot of room.
Matter 02 November, springs down, runway 13 at Bravo 2, 1030 at Niner, take off.
Okay, airport just said wind was 030, so that's coming back southwest. Look at this flag in the middle of the road.
Springs down, runway 17 left, 1030 at Niner, clear for option.
Along south. Yep.
So we have to really be careful hopping those power lines and hitting that field, because it could blow us back. So you just kind of get closer to the road and then come.
If you wanted to be in that field specifically, yes. And what we can do is go, we're easing down pretty slowly. We got a lot of speed. So my suggestion is we get out into sort of these houses here And as we continue to ease down, then it will probably come back. We don't know where that shift is, though, is the tricky part. But it is very important for us to keep that power line in awareness, because it's way down here, and then you'll see up around the green building, it shifts up to the other side of the road. So we're in the 7,000s, so I anticipate that we're going to start to see some slowdown. Yeah. You're doing exactly right, just easing it down, because if we can get into this neighborhood and then take a nice curl back, we got plenty of room.
Number 02, November 10 left, heading for 100.
I think we are very close to getting a slowdown. Feel that wind in your face?
Yeah. Definitely slowing down now.
Yeah. And it feels colder.
Yeah, it does.
So make sure that you don't sort of bounce off the top. You're descending at a great rate now. But notice how we're going to start slowing down. Make sure that you keep the balloon heavy so that you get into that slower run. Don't burn right away. Still got a lot of clearance on these power lines. But we're slowing down. Our speed is slowing down. Our descent rate is slowing down. Look at that, we're already down to 16. Just enough to keep it warm. Down to 14 knots. Starting to feel a little bit more comfortable. Good. So this experience is pretty common in Colorado, where we've got fairly high upper level winds, but we come down and it calms down again. And so it's important to be able to navigate that. Okay, so now we want to make sure that we feel that wind in our face. Go ahead and start to slow that descent rate. Level us out. Notice that we're turning. Got a lot of opportunities out here, some light poles, power lines, that kind of thing. But we also do anticipate the wind going back to the south.
Right.
So if we keep this drift, then do we potentially come back and land in these fields? Maybe.
Very good looking landing spot.
It sure is. All over the dark green here. Okay. Wind is going that way, pretty healthy. Still that way, still that way, still that way. I never saw it turn all the way back.
Well, I mean, with this track, I mean, I see lots of options.
I do too. I think what I'd recommend is we initiate another descent.
Okay.
And we just kind of ease it all the way down. I anticipate that we'll go more and more west. If we can land before the neighborhood, that's great. If not, we've got other options. But if we could land like in this construction or even in that grassy area, we see roads, we've got access there, we know that. So let's go ahead and descend.
Should I camp?
You don't need to. I think since we're perfectly level now, just let it cool. And we're calming down. We've got 7 knots. We've got to be super aware of potentially that hard left turn and the power lines that are up ahead of us. These little power lines below us also. So this might be one of those where we decide at the last minute to land quick. Does that make sense? So I see you in your landing position. All that's excellent, because we're still tracking really nicely here. And as we continue to drop down, we think we're going to go left, but we don't know whether we're going to go left and ease up into that, or go left, come back. So we might end up coming down and saying, oh, let's dump it right here, for example. With all of the power lines, almost regardless of speed, we would want to be pretty aggressive at, you know, getting down and getting the balloon stopped. I do anticipate that we're going to continue to slow down as we get lower. So go ahead and keep letting it ease down. I'm actually just going to get you started. Okay. My spit went back this direction. Okay. Power lines on our left are the most. Everything in front of us is just light poles, no wires. Yep, you're doing great. Right now, I'm thinking maybe this field on the other side of the tractors, or you see the fire hydrant there. As long as we keep letting it get heavy, don't overburn, we got a really nice track here. Really nice. Yep, let it stay heavy. Let it stay heavy. Let it stay heavy.
Inversion or something?
A little bit. Let it stay heavy. Let it stay heavy. Notice how we've almost leveled out. Yep, let it stay heavy. You're doing great. Right now I'm looking just on the other side of the fire hydrant. Yep, let it stay heavy. Let it stay heavy. Ah, okay, now you can burn. And again. And one more time. Okay, you're in your landing position. Okay, a little vent. Little vent, little vent. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Nice, okay, let it go. And burn. I'm watching these stakes. Burn. Burn. Stop. And as soon as we clear that stake, and right now, vent. Vent, 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 vent. Take everything you got. Everything, we're done. Nicely done, Travis. Nicely done. Hang on. And hold that open. Nicely done. Yes. Look at that. Brilliant. That was beautiful, man.
So awesome.
And we're going to stay in because that breezes a little bit.
Yeah, I shouldn't have let off the red line.
But that's okay. I'm just going to unhook the sound line, okay?
Okay. Oh, that was amazing.